What's up? I recently realized that most of my vacation photos are actually just POV shots of whatever high quality pan of chocolat I've tracked down in that city. That's because I live for that private little 3-minute window where it's just me and a flaky, buttery chocolate pastry. Today, I'm gonna show you a simple, beginner-friendly way to recreate one for yourself at home. First things first, I'll need to temper 225 grams of high-fat butter. I'm using Kerrygold here, but any brand that's 82% butterfat or higher is good for laminated pastry. I'll just throw this into a warm place real quick to soften it up while I mix my dough. For that, into my stand mixer, I'll combine 165 grams of warm water, 165 grams of scalded milk that's been cooled to about 90°F. To scald it, I heated it to 180, then let it cool in the fridge for about 10 minutes. Behind the milk goes 8 grams of instant yeast, 50 grams of sugar, 10 grams of salt, and 515 grams of all-purpose flour. To mix, I'll pop on the dough hook and spin on low speed for 2 to 3 minutes or until the dough comes together into a shaggy mass like this. Next, I'll flip this mixer up to high speed, or 4 out of 10 on this KitchenAid, and then I'll grab 40 grams of softened butter. This is regular butter, by the way. There's no need for Kerrygold inside of the dough. Now, with the mixer running on high, I'll drop in the butter one bit at a time. I'll give that a minute or so to get everything combined, then I'll continue mixing on high speed for 5 more minutes. Once the dough has gotten a good base of gluten developed and it's clearing the bowl, I'll stop the mixer and give it a tug to see how it feels. No tearing, no shearing, so we're good to go. Next, I'll flip it into a bowl, then I'll shape the dough into a tidy little ball. This is gonna add additional strength to the dough, but it'll also give us a more uniform starting point for rolling and shaping later on. Now, I'll pop on a lid and set a timer for 90 minutes. While that ferments, I'll make the most important part of any laminated pastry, the butter block, or the thin rectangle of firm butter that we use to create clean laminated layers inside of a dough. To make it, I'll need 2 half-sheet tray-sized pieces of parchment paper, a ruler, and a pen. To start, I'll drop the parchments on top of each other. Then I'll drop my ruler in the middle. I'll make 2 lines that are 8 inches apart from each other and about equidistant from the outer edge. From there, I'll use my ruler to stripe a 12-inch line straight through the marks that I made on each side. Then I'll connect those 12-inch lines on the top and the bottom, and now I've got an 8 by 12-inch rectangle sketched out. Next, I'll take the ruler and use it as a straight edge to fold both parchment papers into tight creases. Now I've got 2 pieces of paper that have perfectly folded boxes that interlock. Checking back on the butter, you can see that it's soft but not mushy or melty. This is the pliable state that we want this butter to be in the entire time we're rolling out the pastry. If the butter's too firm, it'll be brittle and break when we roll it out, ruining the lamination. And if it's too soft, it'll get fully mixed into the dough, making brioche. So I'm gonna drop this butter brick into the middle of one of my parchment papers, then I'll top that with the other folded paper. From there, I'll smush the butter into a semi-flat layer, and then I'll fold both papers together, making sure that there's really tight creases. From there, I'll flip it over, and now we've got butter trapped inside the paper. Now we can do whatever we want to it. I want to make it into a perfectly flat rectangle, so I'll pound it flat a little bit, and then I'll use the side of my rolling pin to push the butter into each corner. Once I've got this butter pushed out into the corners, I'll make it evenly flat by topping it with a sheet tray and pushing down on it really hard. I used to fuss with the rolling pin to try and make this flat, and there was mixed results. Then one day I was like, oh, I'll use a flat thing to make this flat. And it worked. Now we've got a beautiful, uniform, flat butter block. But it's too soft. If we tried to roll this into the dough right now, it would smear everywhere and make for a pretty flat pan of chocolat. So I'll slide it onto a sheet tray to keep it perfectly flat, and then I'll move it into the fridge to firm it up until about 20 minutes before it's time to laminate. 20 minutes before it's time to laminate, I'll pull out this butter, and now it's too firm. We need a butter block that's gonna be in that malleable sweet spot. So I'll set it aside to temper it, and I'll grab my dough. After about 90 minutes of fermentation time, you can see it's more than doubled in size. So to start the lamination phase, I'll flip this dough out onto a well-floured work surface. I'll flour the top and flip it over so that the side that was touching the bowl is now well dusted and touching the cutting board. And then next, I'll degas the dough pretty aggressively because overly gassy and bubbled up dough will be susceptible to collapse when laminated and proofed. One more quick hit of flour here, and then using my rolling pin, I'll roll this dough out into the length of my cutting board, which is now 18 inches because I've turned my board longwise like this. And once I've got this dough rolled into a rectangle that's about 18 by 8, it's time to check back on the butter. At this point, it's been warmed up slightly and I can bend it without smearing it or cracking it. That's the sweet spot. Now I'll flip this butter parchment over and drop it on the bottom 2/3 of the dough. From there, I'll use my hands to very gently warm the backside because that will allow me to separate the paper just a little bit easier. And now to create my first 2 layers, I'll grab the top third of the dough, fold it over the middle third, then I'll grab the bottom third and fold that over the top and the middle. I'll pat that down to get everything stuck together, then I'll turn the whole package 90 degrees and roll it out to 18 inches long one more time. Now that the butter is combined with the dough, we do need to work pretty quickly. Every minute that this butter is out of the fridge, it's warming and inching closer to the point where it's going to unify with the dough. Now, once I got this dough rolled back out, I'll turn my board back to its normal orientation. Then I'll do what's called a book style fold. For that, I'll grab one side, fold it into the middle, then I'll grab the other side and do the same. From there, I'll fold both sides over each other to create a book shape. This gives us 8 layers of butter inside the dough with the absolute minimum amount of rolling and folding. Now, I'm gonna grab my rolling pin and give that a firm but gentle pounding to seal everything together and to flatten things out. At this point, the butter is warmed up and this dough is quite tight, so I'll flip the pastry onto a sheet tray, cover it with a towel, then throw it in the fridge to cool down the butter and relax the gluten for 30 minutes. While that rests, I'll thank Scentbird for sponsoring this video. I've come a long way since dousing my body in Axe body spray after first period gym, but no matter how you like to smell, maybe that's like a pine forest or like the owner of a yacht, I bet that guy smells pretty good, Scentbird has a fragrance that you'll like. Scentbird is a fragrance subscription service that lets you try a new designer fragrance each month for only $17. You'll get a 30-day supply of each scent to try out before you commit to a full bottle. This month, Scentbird sent me Mind Games Blockade. That one smells like mango skin and patchouli. Initio Paragon smells like white sage and lavender. Chris Collins' Sweet Taboo smells like cardamom, cinnamon, and sade playing in the background. And finally, my favorite, Heretic's Dirty Coconut. That one smells like coconut and sandalwood. It's just clean and a little bit beachy. So to try Scentbird, click the link below or scan this QR code and use code Lagerstrom for 55% off your first month at Scentbird.com. That's only about $8 for your first month. After 30 minutes of rest time, this butter is back into that malleable sweet spot and my dough is ready to be rolled once again. So I'll move this over to my board, flour it up, then I'll pound lightly with the blunt edge of my rolling pin to flatten it. I find this is the best way to spread out the dough without putting excessive pressure in any one place. That can smear the butter into the dough. From there, I'll roll this dough for another minute or two until it's about twice as wide as it was when we started and about half as thick. Once we're there, I'll slide this back onto the sheet tray and throw it into the fridge for another 20 to 30 minutes. We'll need this dough nice and chilly for the last stage. 30 minutes later, I'm gonna roll this dough one last time to get it about 1/4 of an inch thick, 10 inches tall, and 15 inches wide. I'll mention that a lot of professional bakers would have folded their dough 1 or 2 more times, giving them 16 or even 32 layers of butter. That's great if you want to push it that far, but most home cooks aren't going to be able to get that right. When you get to that level of lamination, you really need to have a good feel for the dough temperature and process so that you can finesse it into a flat sheet without losing your layers. I've opted to keep it simple with only 8 because most people can achieve this first try, and as you'll see, it delivers a pretty great result. Now, once I've got this rolled flat, I'll clean up all 4 sides with my bench scraper. It might seem like we're wasting some valuable pastry here, but this stuff on the edges makes pretty wacky croissants because the butter inside is layered unevenly. Now, once I've got this tidied up into a clean rectangle, I'll cut it into 8 equal sized strips that are 3 inches wide and about 5 inches tall. At this point, if you see any butter smearing around the edges, throw these back in the fridge for about 10 minutes to firm it all back up. To roll these into pain au chocolat, I'll grab 2 strips of chocolate and stack them on one end. To prep the chocolate, I grabbed 1 4-ounce bar of 70% cacao baking chocolate, and I cut it into little strips using a serrated knife. The serrated knife here keeps this chocolate from cracking, which is crucial. If you use a plain knife, even if it's super sharp, it's going to shatter the chocolate. That's not going to roll up too good inside of a pastry. For each individual pastry, I'm using 2 strips of chocolate stacked on top of each other. That means each quarter section is going to need to be cut in half and then half again. Each bar should give you exactly 16 pieces for 8 pastries. Now, once this chocolate is stacked up on the end, I'll just roll the laminated dough up into a fat cylinder. When I get to the other end, I'll make sure to tuck the edge underneath so that the whole thing is sitting on its seam. Without this, the pastry pastry would rise lopsided in the oven. Today, I'm gonna roll out all 8, but only proof and bake 4. So I'll set those 4 up on a parchment paper on a sheet tray and cover them with another sheet tray to proof for 90 minutes. For the other 4, I'll wrap and freeze them so that the next time I want fresh pain au chocolat, all I need to do is pull them out and proof them. 90 minutes later, when I check back, you can see that these little BBs have more than doubled in size, and when I poke them, it leaves an indent that slowly springs back. The last step here before I bake these is to hit them with 2 layers of egg wash. For me, that's 1 egg and a big splash of milk, vigorously stirred to break up any stubborn egg whites. The milk sugar in the wash will help bring an extra layer of deep brown color to the outside. And once I've got these hit with 2 layers of egg wash, I'm gonna load them into a 425F oven to bake for 16 to 18 minutes. Cut to a quick but satisfying time lapse of flakiness being made in real time, and after 18 minutes, these are deeply golden brown and well risen. So I'll pull them out. As you can see, we've got plenty of frickin' layers here. The rolling of the pastry actually compounded the 8 layers we started with, and now we've got 12 to 16 going on. It's simultaneously crispy, soft, flaky, and even a little bit chewy. It's buttery, rich, a little bit sweet, and oh yeah, it's chocolatey. I honestly hope you guys dive in and give it a try. Tag me on Insta if you do. Let's eat this thing!